have that much range and control over your Altissimo, then stick around, because I'm going to show you the one exercise that's going to get you there. While there are a number of fundamentals you can work on to improve your Altissimo, there is one exercise in particular that is guaranteed to improve your tone, your intonation, your range of the Altissimo, and your control over the Altissimo. And that exercise, of course, is harmonics, or the overtone series. Now, for those of you that don't know, the overtone series was discovered by Pythagoras back in the day, the same Pythagoras from the Pythagorean theorem. And it is a series of intervals that are sympathetic intervals. Anytime you play a note, these intervals may or may not speak. And these intervals, strangely enough, are what give saxophone players specifically, but other instruments as well, what give us our unique tones. What different harmonics are speaking helps define your tone on the instrument. For instance, classical saxophonists have a very clear, clean tone. That is because very few harmonics are speaking. And then you hear someone like Sonny Rollins or Dexter Gordon, and they have a very rich sound. That's because they're making these overtones speak with the way they're playing the instrument. So the overtone series is a series of intervals, like I said, and you can think of it like a phone number. You can think of it, it's an 8, and then a 5, and then a 4, and then a 3, and then a 3, and then a 2, and then another 2, and then a 1, etc., etc. The further away you get from the fundamental note, the closer they get together and the more out of tune they get. It's just an interesting tidbit. But we're going to start with the first 5 today. The interval series is an 8, which is an octave, and then a 5th, which is a 5th above your octave, and then a 4th, which brings you a 4th above your 5th, which brings you back to your tonic, and then a 3rd above that, which is your major 3rd, and then another 3rd above that. It's kind of out of tune at this point, and that 3rd will give you your 5th. So those are the 5 we're going to deal with. So you have the octave, you have the 5th, you have the octave again, then you have the 3rd, and then you have the 5th. And by the time you get to the 5th, it's getting pretty out of tune, but you'll hear what I'm talking about. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to start working on this exercise, but the first thing I'm going to show you is how the intervals are laid out, so you can hear it in your head. Now I'm going to start with B flat. You can do B flat B or C. Now this works on any saxophone, alto, bari, tenor, soprano, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to start with B flat. I'm going to show you the overtone series, and then I'm going to show you the first approach to this harmonic exercise. So this is the overtone series. So that's the overtone series based off B flat. That's the octave, the 5th, the octave again, then the 3rd, and then the 5th. And then I worked my way back down. So I'm going to show you the first way to approach this exercise now, but let me briefly explain what's going on here. So you will finger the fundamental, which in this case we're playing B flat. So you hold down all the keys that are going to give you B flat, and then you're going to make these intervals speak, just manipulating your embouchure and the air that's coming out. You're not biting, you're not doing anything, it's just manipulating your embouchure. And I'm not going to explain what's happening inside my throat. There's a lot of things going on, but the best way to do this is just trial and error. You just got to get in there and try to figure it out. I saw a great masterclass with Jim Morrison, who's a great trumpet player from, well, he's a great brass player from Australia. He can play everything. He's incredible. But I saw a masterclass with him one time, and somebody asked him how he played a certain thing on the horn. And he thought about it for a minute, and then he looked at me and said, well, everybody do this. And he went, meh. He made like a weird sound. And everybody in the audience went, meh, right back at him. And he said, I didn't explain what I was doing there. I didn't show you what was going on with my tongue or my throat or tell you what the note was. He's like, I made a sound and you imitated me and you did it perfectly. So that was his approach to playing the horn. He's like, I want to play that. I'm just going to try to do it, which was fascinating. I never approached music that way before. I always was very academic about it. I had to know what was happening. I had to try to reproduce that. But music, of course, is very auditory. So if you hear something, you just got to try to do it. So it's the same thing with the harmonic series. I'm not going to tell you what's going on. You just got to play this exercise and listen to it and try to recreate it. So I'm going to show you what's going on, and then we're going to play through it. So first of all, like I said, you will hold down all the keys that will play B flat, a low B flat. And then the first way to approach this exercise is pitch matching, is what I like to call it. So the first overtone in the series is an octave. So an octave above B flat, obviously, is B flat. You can play it with the bis. That's probably the bis key. That's probably the most in tune. So you play that. And then you finger your low B flat and you try to make that note speak. And you can hear it sounds rough. You can hear the low note, the fundamental sneaking back in. Now you just do this back and forth. You play the octave, and then you play the fundamental. You play the octave and the fundamental until you can make them sound nearly identical. And it takes a second, but... And you can hear the intonation slightly off. You're going to encounter that with the overtone series. Don't worry about that too much at first, but as you start playing this exercise, it will improve your intonation because you'll get better at matching. You'll gain more control over your throat. So that's how you start this exercise. You do the octave. And then you do the fifth. So the next overtone is a fifth above the octave. So that's F. We're in B flat. The fifth is F. So we're going to play an F, and then we're going to try to pitch match with the fundamental. So you can hear how that sounds. The F is a little easier. You might want to start with the F. It's a little easier to make that speak. And then you take it up to the next overtone, which is a fourth above that, which is your octave, again, 2 octaves above the fundamental. So you play it and you pitch match. And then the next overtone, which is a third above that. So that's the 3 of B flat, which is D. And then you take it up a third above that, which is your F. And then you work your way back down. So that is the first way to approach this exercise, and it's very important because it gets the tone in your head, and then you try to match it with your fundamental overtone. And that is probably the best way to approach it at first, because you're going to be able to match intonation and color of your tone. So. So that's how you're doing it. And now I'm doing that. All those overtones, I'm just holding all the keys that make the fundamental, the B flat, and then you're manipulating it with your throat. It takes a lot of air and a lot of control. And once again, I'm not biting. I am controlling this with my throat. And then the second way to approach this overtone series is to walk up and down the overtones. And now at first, you're going to want to re-articulate every time you're playing one of these. But over time, you'll get to the point where you will be playing the fundamental, and you'll move to the next overtone, and you can just make the next one speak without having to adjust anything, other than your embouchure slightly. So I'm going to play through that now so you can hear what that sounds like. Same thing, we're on B flat, and now this one is the fun one, because you're holding the keys that make your fundamental, so you're holding all the B flat, and then you are making all the notes speak without changing any fingerings. So you're holding B flat, and here's what it sounds like. And that, it was very difficult to play that easily. I knew some monsters back in the day who could just effortlessly move between all of them, and they were incredible players. This exercise will improve your tone, your intonation, and your altissimo. Because once you get to a certain point, they get closer and closer together the higher you get up. And once you get into your altissimo, I'm not biting, I'm not doing it, I'm just manipulating my throat. So if you were to keep going with the overtone series, which I don't recommend at first, you'll keep hitting these smaller and smaller intervals, and you'll be way up into the altissimo. So for instance, I'll start with the F, the high F. Now here it is with the low B flat fingered. I know that sounds awful and out of tune, but I'm not biting, I'm not doing anything, I'm just manipulating with my throat. And then as you start to work on your altissimo after that, you'll be able to control the intonation and the color of your altissimo much easier once you have this kind of an exercise under control. So you start with B flat, you work your way through those two exercises, pitch matching, and then working your way up and down the 5 harmonics. Then you move to B, and you do the same thing with B. And then you move to C, and you do the same thing with C. And I would just stick to those 3 for now, because any higher than that, and you're starting to get to a point where you're losing harmonics because the whole instrument is not speaking. The reason this works so well with B flat and B and C is because you were holding down you're basically making this entire tube, the instrument, and you're manipulating the overtone series that is produced by the entire piece of metal. Now I know this exercise sounds ridiculous, but it is guaranteed to improve your tone and your intonation and your altissimo range. Because once you get up to a certain point in the altissimo range, especially doing the harmonic series, this gets you away from needing to have specific fingerings to make notes speak. Now don't get me wrong, there are very specific altissimo fingerings, but for every altissimo note, I'm not kidding, there's probably 3 or 4 different ways to finger that altissimo note. It all depends on what horn you're playing, what mouthpiece you have, what reed you're playing, what ligature you have. It all depends on your setup, what fingering in the altissimo works for you. Now I had to go through and over months and months, probably a couple of years honestly, as I expanded my altissimo range and got better on the horn and more fluent, you have to adjust your fingering. And the fingering really just makes it easier to be in tune and for that specific note to speak. But honestly, once you get to a certain point in your altissimo, you don't even need hands anymore. You can play altissimo above a certain point with no hands. It sounds crazy, but the harmonic series helps you with that because you're not using your hands, you're fingering one fundamental, and once you get to a certain point, the notes are so close together, you can just lip them around or manipulate them. I don't bite. That's something we're trying to avoid here. You can manipulate those notes without having to finger specific altissimo notes. For instance, once you get up to, say, a high D, I'll play that there, you can let go and you can move around all over the place. Like, I didn't use hands for any of that. Now, that sounded a little out of tune because I wasn't fingering anything. I wasn't holding a fundamental. I was just lipping it around. But in context, when you're playing a song, not that this ever is really, it's more of a party trick, but to have that kind of control. I wasn't biting. I wasn't using my teeth to control the altissimo. It was all controlled with my armature. And you can get there by playing this exercise. I worked on this exercise for years in college, every single day, for probably 20 or 30 minutes a day. Annoying all my roommates and neighbors, but I now have nearly 5-octave altissimo range on the tenor sax. I have more on Barry, and it's from, I swear to God, it is from playing this exercise. Just being able to manipulate and control the overtone series, you control the altissimo without having to bite. Because once you get up high, if you're trying to bite, all you're going to do is stop your reed from vibrating. So you have to have a lot of breath support. You have to have a lot of control without biting, just a lot of circular control, controlling and allowing it to vibrate, and then armature manipulation. And you get that control by playing the overtone series. So there you have it. There is one exercise, the harmonic overtone series, that will get you to have crushing altissimo, great tone, great intonation, and almost a limitless range, especially depending on what horn you play. So thanks for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you all in the next one.